I'm going to start about my athletic career in sports. I played mostly football and high school track, and then in college I played football. The school district that I went to school in had a football program and a basketball program that started in sixth and sixth grade. They had fifth and sixth grade tackle football, and they had basketball. And they had a spring track meet. The community had 4 grade schools, each of which had one team in football and basketball. And then the community had a Catholic school that went through the 9th grade, or up to the 9th grade, and a Lutheran school that went up to the 9th grade. The Catholic school, one of the members of the church subsidized their athletic program, and so they played football. The Lutheran school didn't play football. We had 5th and 6th grade tackle football, so we had 4 grade schools, public grade schools, that participated in the program, and then the St. Mary's, which was the Catholic school. Normally, the 5th and 6th grade teams would practice after school at the playground at the school district, at their school. So they would play 4 or 5 tackle football games in a season. And so then when we got to the 9th grade, all those players came together and played on the high school sports teams, the junior, the freshman and the junior varsity and the varsity. When I was in the 5th and 6th grade and the 7th and 8th grade, I played defense as a linebacker, and I also was a fullback. I wasn't the fastest in the school, but I was 3rd or 4th or 5th fastest, and so I played as a back in football. When I was a freshman in high school, they put me on the varsity football team. So I went from junior high football to varsity football. And I played defense and offense. Obviously, I didn't start, but I did play. And at some time, I don't know, in October, late October, one of the players on our team hit me from the side and tore all the ligaments in my left knee. That resulted in my moving in as a sophomore, junior, and senior to playing in the line and playing defense and not playing as a running back. I would have been better as a player if I'd have played in the backfield, because I had more speed, but I didn't when I was a sophomore, junior, and senior. We played in that time in what was called the North Central Conference in Michigan. It was a Class B school. In the beginning, we had Traverse City, which was a Class A school, and we had Mount Pleasant, which was either a large B or an A. And then we had Alma, and we had Manistee and Ludington, and Big Rapids and Cadillac. So there were, I think, 6 or 7 schools in the league. That was one of the better schools in football in that part of the state. I mean, the conference was. And we probably had, in high school, we had a freshman football team, a junior varsity football team, and a varsity. The varsity normally would have between 25 and 30 players. And the school district was, there was a college in the town, so you had maybe 25% of the football players came from families whose parents were teachers at a college. And then there was probably 20 or 25% of the players came from families that were farm families in the surrounding area of the school district. And then the rest of the kids came from town. Now, back then, Big Rapids had two school districts that didn't have a high school. So they paid tuition to send their students to Big Rapids. And Stanwood normally had 2 buses of students, so they had and Stanwood had quite a few athletic students who played football. Big Rapids really never, I can't think of any time that we won the North Central Conference in football, but something like 50 years in a row, the community, Big Rapids, always won more games than they lost in a football season. Football was a fairly significant event in town. There was a stadium. We never had any minority football players. I mean, there weren't minorities in the community. Mount Pleasant had a Chippewa Indian resident school, but none of the districts had black or Hispanic populations as we would know them today. When I played basketball in the junior high and in the elementary school, but when I got in high school, I think I only played basketball as a freshman, and then I ran track and played football. I was a hurdler, and then in football, I played in the line and played. When I played, we played a single wing. So, but we won 5 or 6 games out of an 8 or 9 game schedule most years. And there were a lot of players that came out. We probably had 2 full teams, 22 players or more. Big Rapids didn't have, they had a basketball team, they had a baseball team. Baseball was a spring sport, but it was far enough north so that there were a lot of times that April wasn't very conducive weather-wise to playing baseball. But they had a baseball team, and they had a lot of players play baseball, and it was probably the predominant spring sport in the school district. Well, Big Rapids had when I was in the 5th and 6th grade. The football coach had been a football player at Michigan State. He'd played on the varsity football team at Michigan State. So, and I don't know how long Dick Edwards was. Maybe he probably coached for 6 to 10 years in Big Rapids. And he taught physical education. So, and he was you know, the kids liked him and got along with him, and so there was and they had a feeder system, you know, so that you paid junior high and you paid 5th and 6th grade football, and so then they had a freshman team and a JV. So you could, but if you got to be a junior or senior in high school, you'd played, you know, 4 years of tackle football before that. You know, and which isn't true in many of these communities today. And it was a rural enough community that most of the trips would be from 50 to 100 miles. The football team, we never stayed overnight, but they always had a meal. When you went out of town, the whole football team had a sit-down meal. Well, it was not unusual to have a lot of the farm kids in particular, that would have been the first time they ever went to a restaurant to a sit-down meal. And there was an athletic boosters club, so that if they didn't have a pair of dress pants or a white shirt, the booster club would provide them to them. So, it was a pretty big deal, you know, if a kid was on a JV, they'd go, if they went to Manistee, that was 70 miles. Well, you know, after the football game, they'd have a sit-down meal. And I went back there and coached there, after I graduated from there, and you know, it was a part of their socialization. So a lot of those kids, you know, they'd probably be 15 to 20% of the players who were on the freshman high school football team or the JV team, that was the first time they ever went to a restaurant and had a non-home meal where they ate out. And so, and the school had fairly high standards about grades and in order to be eligible to play. So it led to experiences for some of the students, maybe the rural students more than, but there were people in town too who came from the poorer parts of town who I'm sure hadn't had ahead of time and hadn't eaten out. And there was a mix of the society that, you know, you'd have some college professors and you'd have, you know, the bank president and some business owners and that kind of stuff. But there were the farm families and the people who were just workers who had kids. So you had you had a fair mixture of kids on those athletic teams. So sports were a big thing. This community had a history of winning a lot. Every team would win more than they lost, especially in football. And football was probably the most community social value for the thing. And we had a football field where you could probably seated 2,000 to 3,000 students, 2,000 to 3,000 people at a game. So, and there was, and a lot of the parents of the players would travel to the games out of town, whose sons played, so they'd go to Manistee or Ludington or Cadillac, or the farthest trip was Traverse City, which was 100 miles one way. All the World War II vets came home. Ferris had a football team, and they had a pretty good team for 3 or 4 or 5 years. After World War II, after all the vets came home and the GI Bill, so you could go and watch the college play, and that. So there was a lot of interest in the community in the sports. So when I was a senior and a junior, I think I was a second team all conference player as a junior, and I was a second team or first team all conference as a senior. And then I think I was an all-state, West Michigan all-state, I think first team lineman when I was a senior. Big Rapids was about 70 miles from Grand Rapids, and the Grand Rapids had the regional newspaper for Western Michigan. So, and I was on the Detroit Free Press all-state football team as a senior. I think I was an honorable mention. So when I was a senior, the guy who had started us playing football had left Big Rapids and he'd gone to Florida. And he and the line coach were on the football. There were coaches at DeLand, Florida, at a college. I think 3 of us off our football team, they had us come down there for a weekend. They were trying to see if we were interested. But really, none of the 3 of us could afford to go to DeLand because it was a private college. But it was kind of an interesting trip to go to. And 2 of us went to Central, and Central was recruiting 2 of us. And then the best player we had on the team was about 180 pound 10-2 sprinter. And there weren't very many 10-2 sprinters back then in a 100-yard dash. So, but Ron Clements, his girlfriend got pregnant, so he didn't go to college. But he was a very good student and a very good football player. Then I think one guy off the team went to Michigan State, and because he was about 6'4", 240, 250. He was, for those days, he was a big kid, big person. And I got invited to Southern Methodist to go down for a weekend, and but I can't remember how much it was, but it was a lot of money. It was like 25 or 30,000 to go to school there. Well, even though they were going to give me 10 or 12,000, there was no way I could afford to go to school. So I went to Central Michigan and played at Central. I played on. Central had a JV team, and I played on the junior varsity team and started as an offensive guard and a linebacker, and then I played on the varsity 2 years, but I didn't start and I didn't play a lot. And I took a lot of classes in college. I took 16, 18 credits, so I could graduate when I was because I was going to be a teacher, and when I was a senior, I taught at a school about 65 miles away, and I taught in the morning, 3 classes, and then the afternoon I took classes at college. So since I was doing my student teaching, I could do it at where I was teaching and get good credit for the hours I needed to get a student teaching certificate. And then I left there and went to a school, Croswell Lexington, which is over on the extreme east side of the state, north of Port Huron, up against the Canadian boundary, and then went to school and taught there, and went over there and started working in the summertime in a summer recreation program. And I was the head football coach there, and the junior varsity basketball coach, and I was the track coach. And then I left there. I wasn't married, I was single. When I was there, I got married. I think I worked there 5 years. And then I got a graduate assistantship at Indiana University. And they paid, I don't know, I had an graduate assistantship, and I worked for the research, the guy that did all the research at the university in the School of Health and Physical Education. Indiana had one of the better programs in the country in that. And Buchwalder was the guy, the college professor, and I helped run a research program for him and for the swimming coach. Then after I got my master's degree there, I got hired back in my hometown of Big Rapids, and went back there and taught and worked there for 6 years. And all the time I coached and taught in Michigan. I coached football. And when I went to work for the MEA, then I left coaching. And I really missed it the first couple of years. Well, this is when I was a sophomore. And here's the JV team I was telling you about. That team right there only lost 2 basketball games. I'm the coach down there.
Yeah.
I've got a whole bunch of pictures. I thought I would look through. I'm going to go down and try to get a couple of 3 days here, going through my buckets of stuff.
Right.
Because I've got all kinds of. I think I have every year's when I played football, how many games we won and lost, and that kind of stuff. And I think I have some pictures when I coached football and what my records were there. And I have some when I was